lähti striimikäyntiin. Sitäpäs jotain kuunneltavaa.
And I didn't know what the big deal was, but I knew that's who I had met. And so I went on this journey, and then like at 13, after I was bar mitzvahed, I was given a journal.
It's quite late already.
Like a cross pen, it's a really nice pen,
No.
and a journal to write in. And I did, and my godmother gave me this as like a gift, and I didn't know what to do. And so I would just sit. I would listen. So one of my biggest inspirations that actually activated my ability to channel, like not just say things spontaneously, but to start to do automatic writing,
instead of
Michael Jackson.
Looking like a giant.
Okay.
So I would listen to Michael Jackson, and it just
I
things
would like
would
to
come
make
out,
it look
and I
more
would
like
write
a-
about.
Well, I mean, he was pretty connected.
Yeah.
What the music that he did hit billions of people around the world, and
I mean, incredible. And the
Yeah.
frequency,
And many
was
layers.
right. He inside all God's children.
oh yeah, human nature. Yeah.
Right. And then I started writing quotes. And for some reason, when I started
let's
channeling
see.
quotes, I would
That's
number
one
them,
thing.
and after
Then there's
every one,
another
I
thing.
would sign them. I don't know. Early on, you have your process. I don't know what I'm doing.
You signed them.
I have to sign my quote.
You're practicing
keep
your
making
autograph.
the
I understand.
What an ego.
You're like, I did this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I stopped numbering my quotes after the 4,000th one I channeled. Wow. And this was when I was 16 years old. So I'd already channeled like 4,000 quotes by like 16 or 17.
But you don't know the term channeling.
I don't know. I just heard, like, I think I was watching a show on Edgar Casey. And I heard the word channel, and I went, well, that's clearly what I'm doing.
Obviously, I'm not sleeping, but it's, but it's
and it was a conscious state. And what I would realize was a lot of people have very vivid dreams. My dream state felt like when my eyes were open. So Edgar Casey would go to sleep or get a trance and bring this information in. I intuitively felt like I do that when my eyes are open. So my whole life, I haven't had like a lot of super vivid dreams. In fact, as I went through my awakening process, one of the hardest things has been to sleep, because for me, the waking state is where my access to everything really exists. So I'm just writing these quotes. Like, I think the first quote I channeled was, "In tested times, true character prevails." I'm like, what? 13? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just channeling these words and showing my parents. They're like, well, that's...
Listening to The Cure.
The Cure. No, it would have been a very different...
Very emo.
Very...
emo.
Boys don't cry. Do they? Or do they?
Or do they?
Do they? Meow. Listen to Michael Jackson. And then the other part of it is spirituality is where I find my home. Spirituality is where I find sanity. The world I live in doesn't feel like it's real. I feel like I'm in some weird movie.
Yeah, simulation.
But spirituality feels real, and the other place that felt real was on stage as a performer. I'm in a singing and dancing group, I'm acting, and for me it was just performing in front of an audience was just a really exhilaration. So the irony is, fast forwards, like when I'm 17, I'm in the singing and dancing group, and we get this audition to be a part of this big show. And we're all dancers. And it turns out we're not going to do much dancing, but we were, I was a part of the Super Bowl halftime show with Michael Jackson.
No, you weren't.
I got to perform with my idol, and what song? Heal the World.
Stop it.
So my whole life.
What year was this?
Oh,
no, 90. When he did 92, 91.
It was the Bills and the Cowboys. It was at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
and he did Heal the, and I was a part of the kids choir with thousands or hundreds of kids. I met him in rehearsal by accident. We were in rehearsal, he was there, and then they say cut, and all these kids swarm him, and he backed up and kind of into me, he turned around, and this is the guy, the being that inspired me, and I like shook his hand, and I went, you're the greatest. And I remember thinking to myself, if he's in a different country, people blocks away are passed out in the street. I'm right here,
of course,
meeting this And
Icon.
it was so surreal. So he inspired me to start channeling, which I didn't, or that was what I would listen to while I was channeling. And then I performed in the Super Bowl show with him, and not knowing that the Heal the World song would be a foreshadowing of what my life's career path and contribution would be.
Right.
But all this time, I never really knew the term channel. I just knew, and I would describe it that way because it felt like wisdom is channeling through me, and it never, for the most time, it was never. Sometimes I would hear it, and I would need 5 minutes before I can get down to write it down. So I kind of hold it in my brain a little bit. I'd go, ooh, hold that one, and I'd write it down. When I was about my early 20s is when my guides started talking to me.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So stop there for a second.
Yeah, please.
So your guides
Yeah,
are
yeah.
starting to talk to you.
Yeah.
Gotta clear. You and I are both fairly grounded.
I know.
We're from the '80s.
I
We're,
know.
we're Gen X. This is we're at a different. We're here. So that's why I love talking to someone of my vintage.
Yeah.
Who is going through this because
Yeah.
we walked over the same bodies.
Yeah, we
same
did.
battlefield.
I love that.
As we went through life. So when your guides start talking to you,
Yeah.
you're hearing now.
Now I'm hearing.
Now you're hearing. You're not seeing.
I'm seeing and hearing and feeling at the same time now.
So you do see them
Yeah, I see him here.
in your third eye. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. You see them inside. Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't like Bob.
Every once in a while, I can see an outline of a being.
Something, but it's mostly all in here.
100%.
Got it.
100%.
So this starts. So now you've been prepped
Yeah.
since 8.
Yeah.
You've been prepped since.
But I
8.
don't know that I've been prepped.
No, of course not. No,
Yeah.
you're just having fun listening to Michael Jackson, signing quotes,
Signing my own quotes.
signing your own quotes because one day this is going to be worth a lot of money. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
And going through all this stuff. So you're actually being prepped and honed
Yeah.
for this next stage.
Yeah.
When your guides come in
Yeah.
and they start talking to you and you start hearing voices.
Yeah.
Now, when you first heard a voice
Yeah.
in your head,
Yeah.
did you think you were going nuts? Or
Yeah.
or did you go, oh, this is the next, because you had been prepped so long? Because I've
Yeah,
spoken
no.
to channels who were just like sitting one day and they're like, hello, Matt, this is your guide. And you're just like, what is happening? And it's a process. It takes
Right.
years to kind of grasp it. You've been kind of a very slow burn
Totally.
to get to this point.
Totally.
So when this happens,
Yeah.
what happened?
Well, I'll tell you the backstory. So I was guided to go into, I felt an inspiration to go into a spiritual bookstore, and they had these pictures of the Ascended Masters on the walls. So I said, "Oh, who's that?" "Oh, the Ascended Masters." And I said, "Who's the guy in the center? He looked like Gandalf the Wizard." I said, "I don't know who he is, but that's my guide." And they said, "Well, that's Melchizedek." And I said, "Well, that's my guide." And they said, "Whoa, and so take our psychic development course."
Of course.
And so and 2 weeks into the course, they said, "Could you teach it?" "What do you mean? I'm here to learn." And then they said, "Could you do a reading?" And what's a reading? I think I'm reading poetry or something. And I sat down with someone, and I'm sitting looking at someone, and for a second I go, this is crazy. And then all of a sudden, something comes through, and I do a reading. I don't even know what a reading is. But then at that time, I'm living with my parents.
How old?
20-some. I can't remember the exact year, but I was 20s. What had happened was I was healing from a back injury. I was a personal trainer. I used to be a bodybuilder and personal trainer.
That's right. You told me.
Yeah, and I was going to compete in bodybuilding. All of my people who know my work were like, "Oh, yeah, all right, where I'm at," which is, by the way, very humbling. When you're on stage in front of hundreds of people and you say, "I used to be a bodybuilder," and they laugh and they think you're joking.
Oh, you're funny, man. Oh, that.
I'm gonna go journal about that.
Oh, we're not going
That's
to go
nice.
journal and cite it.
and cite it, right? And listen to Michael Jackson.
And listen to
Michael's with me.
go old school.
So I was living at my parents' house because I had a back injury and I was in so much pain.
Yeah.
And things are starting to kind of open up. Go to the store. Oh, Melchizedek is my guide. I don't know who Melchizedek is. And I'm in my bedroom of my parents' house, where I was living, and I hear Melchizedek's voice. I just hear a voice say, "You're not who you think you are." And literally what I said was, "Who the F are you?" So that's what I said. Who are you?
Out loud.
I'm listening
Out
to
loud. Who the
podcast.
F are you? And he goes
Oh,
on
that's
and he
funny.
introduced myself. I am Melchizedek, one with the Galactic
This
Council.
time I'm
And
not
this being I'm
listening
talking
music,
to,
so you don't have to
thankfully,
hear
had
me
the
try to
same
sing
loving
along.
feeling from the garden experience when I left my body, and that's how I knew. If it wasn't for the love, and people that know my work know that my work has always been about
too
love.
much.
It's because there has never been a moment with my guides where the wisdom has not been super high level and always loving, always loving. And so it was the love I felt from them that allowed me to trust and listen. And there was always a part of me in the beginning, and at least for the first 10 years of my career, even though I've been doing this for 18 years, where I always held a parallel and I said, this is either happening or I am insane. And I totally held that because it allowed me to go there. So I'd say, okay, well, who am I speaking with? This is Melchizedek.
And who's Melchizedek?
So Melchizedek, from what I understand, because I don't do a lot of research, I guess maybe would have been Jesus' teacher, but is a very high-level ascended master.
He was one of the teachers that taught Jesus.
Yeah, one of the teachers. And I don't know, again, I haven't done a lot of research on Melchizedek. I just know the being that I work with. And so he looks like Gandalf the Wizard. He speaks like, I guess, Gandalf the Wizard would speak, very old worldly. But what's cool is, like, he'll say these words that I've never heard before. Then I look him up and I'm like, that was the right usage. That's an actual word. Like superlative, my son. Ubiquitous.
Right.
Or by tomorrow's time. And I would like, by tomorrow's time?
Who writes like this?
Who
speaks
talks like
who
this?
Speaks like this?
And so I would meet Melchizedek, and then I would say to Melchizedek, I said, he's just said you're going to meet other beings, and I said they have to be accompanied by you. And every single being I met, I gave a specific color and image to. And every time I met them, they had to all come with this combination, so I knew that I was talking to, and because I was afraid of being fooled. I love spirituality so much. I was afraid my mind was making it up. Right. I was afraid I was fooling myself. And if I was going to help people and be given trust and work with people in their most delicate moments of uncertainty, I needed to know that I was really doing this. And what I was doing was so mesmerizing for me, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. It's so otherworldly. So I went through a mixture of experiences. I would say a little reluctant, but not reluctant enough. But every time I would talk to them, I'd ask them questions. And one of the ways I really opened up my channel is I kept asking questions. I wanted to see if they were going to get impatient. I wanted to see if they were going to have the same answers. I wanted to see what would happen. And it was always loving, always patient. The answers never veered. Yeah. I'd ask the same questions, I got the same answers. They'd say things would happen. I mean, it was like very like clockwork. I'd meet Melchizedek, then I went and then I met Jesus, and then it was Mother Mary, then it was Archangel Michael, Kuan Yin, Yogananda, Sri Yukteswar, and I started to meet all these beings. Archangel Gabriel, Archangel Sandalphon, all these beings, they had all these different purposes. I at one point, I had like 30 different guides I'd met. But then over time, Melchizedek was the main guide, and they would bring different energies from these different beings. But Melchizedek has always been the main that I've worked with. And it was the Galactic Council, and I was,
Okay, so hold on a second. Gotta stop you there for a second.
Please.
So when you bring in the Galactic Council,
it
sounds fantastic.
Sounds fantastic.
Are you a Jedi? Like right? And I joke about it because a lot of people say or hear these things, and it just you could dismiss it so quickly. Yeah. It's been something that I've been weary about bringing people in with that kind of terminology. Right. I've heard it, and I understand it, and I get it. Right. But it's something that kind of could turn somebody off. Totally. When you heard Galactic Council. That's right. Now you've met Jesus, you walked in the garden, you've all this stuff. Right. But now you're bringing ETs into the scenario. Yeah. How did you process that? Because again, like you're like, who the F are you? You're that guy. Yeah. You're not like, thank you, I've been signing my name waiting for you. Like, no, none of that stuff. Like, so what did you say when that came into your world? It,
whenever I met with the Galactic Council, I met with ascended masters. I had never met an ET.
Right.
So I didn't know about ETs. I just knew of the gray aliens, and
Sure,
when I was a
course.
kid, I was afraid of being
X-Files. Yeah.
abducted or something.
Sure. Yeah.
Even though if I was abducted, it's probably like, it's me, Steve. We're cousins, right? Like, we're going to the barbecue. So Bob, is that you?
Bob, is that you? You've grown. No.
But when I met with the ascended masters and archangels, I was
I
told
should make
briefly,
myself a few
so these are the
brushes,
beings that oversee the evolution
probably.
of Earth. Now, what's interesting is that I remember saying to my guides, this is always, like, what we're talking about is what I thought I was going to learn in school. Like, when I was in school, in public school, I told myself at a very early age, you only need to know this to get through the system.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like everything I was being taught was some sort of weird mishmash of, like I don't know if any of this is how things really happened. It just felt really strange. And so when I started working with the Galactic Council, I remember the feeling of, okay, the feeling of the garden is there. It's always loving. It's never ego. I feel like the highest version of myself when I'm with them. And this is what I always wanted to be learning. And so there was just such a deep, nearly intangible connection with them. And then I had this experience that I think will kind of pull it on perspective. So at this point, I'm getting used to working with them. I talk very sarcastically. And they are just always in their very loving place. And I remember Melchizedek said, we want to show you something. And so I had the impulse to close my eyes and go into a meditation. And as soon as I did, I was kind of blasted out into a different location, like an astral projection. I walked up the stairs of what looked like the Lincoln Memorial. These pillars, white, and in the entrance was this light table, this table that was illuminated, and standing around in front of it were all the guides that I had been working with. And they were all standing there, and I had this funny feeling of walking up like, hey,
What up?
what up, yo? Like, you know what I mean?
Party.
High five in the house, right?
Matt into his house.
We don't need no water, you know. And so I walked up and I hey, which is funny that I still had my kind of personality. And they said, we want to, my son. We want to show you something.
Take it down.
Take it down, my son. Ground yourself, my son. Visualize tree roots. And so they said, we want to show you something. And so they reached under their faces like they were
Oh, God.
and they pulled up their faces like masks. And underneath all of them was me. And I gasped.
Holy crap.
But this was what was so perfect to my personality. I gasped, and there was silence. And I looked at all of them and I said, I don't get it. And they said, we are not only what you are becoming, we are what you have already become. We are agents of the future who have stepped back in time to visit ourselves in spiritual childhood. That's what I was told.
Beautiful.
Now, in that moment, so succinctly, mind gone, but in my heart, there was a sense of, so I'm channeling beings of different vibrational densities. Each one is an archetypal expression of my totality. So there's now no separation between, I'm working with the Galactic Council, and they are also mirroring what is awakening within me. Wow. And it was at that point when I so channeling has always been a verb of how I do what I do, but I never, when I started to see other people channel, and I love and respect it, all these different beautiful channels, for some reason, I never wanted that to get in the way or limit, because when I started teaching this work, it was after I had some really, like what I described to you as one of my first awakenings. Then I went through many realizations or awakenings of self-realization that were so incredibly, like I literally had the experience of hearing an explosion. I thought there was a gunshot in my neighborhood and it was in my head, and I then felt my entire life's history ooze out of my ears, and my ego just dissolved. Of course, the ego is reborn in a different way. But I've had these huge moments of self-realization. And when I came into the spirituality, I thought that's what I was going to teach. And I didn't want the esoteric nature of my journey to limit, because whenever I was in front of an audience that was really, really into the esoteric, it was like talking to a Star Wars fan who was too much a fan of the franchise to get the deeper metaphor.
Right.
And so I didn't want to limit, because what I was really transmitting was the energy of awakening. Then I would be around people that were really into awakening, but it was so dry, and they thought even intuitive or psychic ability was a mental delusion. So I had this very interest, and then I also noticed that a lot of people who wanted to awaken, either they thought they awakened prematurely, or they just wanted to get out of the pain of their life and were trying to bypass their experience. I realized that what prevents the awakening from really sticking was a certain level of heart coherence, or a certain level of emotional maturity that comes from our healing journey. And I remember talking to my Melchizedek about this, and I said, I'm coming out hot with this awakening stuff, but the people that are really into awakening don't have the emotional healing for it to stick.
Right.
And then the people who will listen to my esoteric stories, like I'm telling you in this audience, are so into that we'll have these big conversations, but the bigger thing will be missed. Like, people will want to ask me, what's it like talking to an ascended master? What's it like being on a light ship? Because I've been beamed up on light ships. What's it like being in different dimensions? And we miss the invitation that this is all about the awakening of consciousness inside all of us. And so I talked to Melchizedek, and he says, my son, a sign will come. Right? He would talk like this every day. Okay, a sign will come. Okay, whatever. And a couple days later, I'm walking down the street, and I hear in my mind, whatever arises, love that. And I didn't know what it meant. And so I thought, well, let's take it literally. So I'm walking down the street, I see some person, and I silently say, I love you. Oh, and I love you. And I think, whatever gets my attention, I'm just going to send love to. And that felt very nice. And then something triggered me later that day, and I realized, this thing was created in my life to trigger the very emotion that showed me what wound or what feeling or version of myself was next in line to be loved. That I'm here to love all parts of me, and whatever parts from my past hadn't been loved by anyone else were waiting in line for a course correction. And my external reality was only created to show me what part of me was next to be loved. Whatever arises, love that. And that became what the Ascended Masters were giving me to share with the world. And it then became my mission to help the world be more heart-centered, help the world learn how powerful it is to be heart-centered, help the world learn what it means to be an empath. Because it's that emotional nourishment that creates the foundation for these bigger awakenings to occur. So I came into this field ready to speak about awakening, and I weave it through my teachings. But I was asked by my guides, hey, what the world really needs is really the emotional sustenance of self-love.
Right.
And so that became my mission for the last 18 years, to help people love what arises, to learn how to love themselves, to not use spirituality as a distraction from self-love, and to not use self-love as a distraction from inspired, mature choices. And I think along the way, I didn't use the word channeling a lot, so I think a lot of people just didn't put me in the category because I'm not trans-channeling.
Correct.
But when I speak, people feel the energy, and what they're feeling is the same feeling of heaven that's never left me since I was 8 years old. And so I'm transmitting the vibration of heaven. I'm transmitting an energy that heals, awakens, and transforms. So when my words are spoken, and I don't even really choose my words. They always flow out of me, even when I'm being funny. I'm not choosing them. And it's the same way like Robin Williams, for example, or Jim Carrey. They are channels.
Absolutely.
If you know what channeling is, you go, they're obviously channeling. It's just not, like I said before we started this broadcast.
Well, they have some funny guides.
But I'll tell you, guides can be extremely funny.
Of course.
You know, our egos are funny, but guides are very funny. So I said off camera, you know, we were talking about channeling, and I said, if I was a world-class chef and I had the ability to smell, and that helped me make incredible food, I wouldn't be known as a sniffer chef, right? Channeling is just one of my abilities. I'm an empath, I'm an intuitive, but these are just one of many things that I've been given to do the work that I do. I've always identified with being a spiritual teacher and a healer. I think of myself as an artist because I think what we do is a work of art.
You're creating.
Creating. I'm a creator. But I've always been a channel. And I think for me, the reason why it wasn't such an obvious thing was because the conversations I got in about my very esoteric upbringing and my experiences, even like when I was beamed up on a light ship and I met Kuan Yin face to face, like I've had these experiences that are, and people hear that, and I love sharing that, but sometimes the conversation gets away from the essence, which is how can we take this story that I've lived, and for every viewer watching this, you know, if they walk away and go, wow, that Matt Kahn is an amazing being, that's not the success of them walking away feeling touched by spirit and being more in tune with their essence, more in tune with their intuition, and being more awake and expanded and healed than before this moment. That's literally my focus. And so, and when I first came out and we put my videos on YouTube, I didn't want it to be listen to me because of these experiences I've had.
I got you.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I got you. I got you 100%.
Yeah.
It's, you don't want to get this stuff in the way.
Right.
I struggle with that myself because a lot of times I'm like, how do I position this? How do I?
Right.
Because my goal is not to preach to the converted.
Right.
That's very easy.
Right.
It's about finding people who are curious about something or curious about something else, and it opens up rabbit holes that they can go down as well. And I'm just to clarify this, none of these things happened on any sort of drugs, mushrooms, toad skin, nothing like that. Okay, I have to ask.
Of course.
No, because I've had people who've had these. I've had people who've had so much LSD that it should have killed a horse. And they went out. They go out to this wonderful and very spiritual experience.
Yeah.
They go to the edge of the universe. They meet an alien, and they go, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. Get out of here." And he goes. 10 years later, they take another trip. I told you not to. You're not ready. You can't go.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So, I say that joking, half joking, but half not, because people a lot of times use psychedelics to go to these places.
Of course. And what's interesting is, you know, I even had, and I have no disrespect for psychedelics, but I think that it needs to be used in a very mindful, prescriptive way.
Absolutely.
So, like, when people come to my events or they watch videos, they feel an energy, right?
Yes.
They go through this experience. They go through an experience that is like a psychedelic trip. Like, even in my waking state, you know, I see the vibrational particles of energy that make up solid form. If I look at the ground, I can see like waves of energy that make up the ground. Like, but these are levels of reality that have been awakened within me, and I still have the ability, thankfully, to function. But I remember I was going to be invited to do a retreat in this retreat center where they also did medicine ceremonies.
Sure.
And they said, yeah, you know, after people are done with your event, they can come and just, you know, do some ayahuasca or whatever. And I said to them, but, you know, it felt irresponsible for me for while people are integrating the energy I'm transmitting to then wander into an ayahuasca circle, do that, and then they're integrating that, then they wander back the next morning. And so too much. And so I think that for me, it's always been about being so responsible, not only for my audience and the experiences I'm guiding, but for me, having the experiences I've had sober has made me respectful of the plant medicine.
Absolutely.
But for me, there's not an interest for, like, people would always say, but aren't you just kind of curious what would happen? And I know that if I was called ceremonially in my heart, like if that was something I needed to connect with, I would follow that. But if I don't have that, like I think one of the most amazing things about this experience for me is it has absolved me of this hunger or curiosity for more for the sake of more. Right? There's a code of mindfulness in the universe. And there's something to be said about making the most with what you have instead of always thinking more is going to be the answer.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been a person who's never drank or smoked.
Yeah.
I tried drinking. It's my body rejected. It was just not something I was built to do.
Yeah.
And many people are like, are you interested if, like, trying a gummy, or doing this? I'm like, it messes with my nervous system.
Yeah.
It's just not what I'm supposed to do. And I've had experiences as well, spiritual experiences that I didn't need to, I got high on my own supply, like you do.
Yeah.
If we get high on our own supply in that sense, where you don't need it. Now, there are people, I spoke to a vet the other day.
Yeah.
It completely helped him cure himself of PTSD.
Of course.
Because it brought up all the pain. There is a purpose for it, and it's not for everyone.
That's right.
Just like this conversation, not for everyone.
Right, of course.
If you are ready for a conversation like this, it'll be in front of you.
Yes.
And if you're watching this to troll us, God bless.
Thank you.
And by the way, and that's some of the most entertainment I have is reading the comments. It's the best. It's
shocking.
The best. It's so much fun.
By the way, it's funny. So my parents both were hippie origin.
Dude.
They both had medical marijuana licenses for their ailments. And when I lived with my parents before a lot of this happened, I would sit with my parents. I'd smoke with my parents. I'd get high. I lived in that kind of family, which is very different.
Very different.
And then I would give Dharma talks. And they would say, Matthew, now we can finally understand what you're saying.
Because I'm high.
And I remember being high and going, oh, this is actually how I feel.
This is what I'm
naturally, but in a different way.
It's different.
It's different.
It's extremely different. I spoke to a yogi once.
Yeah.
And I said, what do you think of psychedelics? And he's like, well, and he gave a beautiful, and again, it's not for everybody, but he goes, taking a psychedelic is like taking a sledgehammer to a wall to make a window. Where meditation is putting in the window.
Sure.
Organically.
Sure.
Because one way is going to be a little slower.
Right.
The other way is a rocket ship.
Right.
And not everyone's ready for that rocket ship.
Well, and it's like it's like a meal at a buffet. You can eat as much as you want, but you're going to have to digest it. And the amount of time it takes to digest an experience, like some people will come to my events and they'll have to digest that. And then what happens is that sometimes the digestive experience is confused for more trauma, and they need something else, they think, to heal that ailment. They don't realize. It would be like, for example, if someone was in surgery and was recovering post-op, and they said, I'm in so much pain, I think I need another surgery to get rid of this. And the nurse says, no, Mr. Smith, what you're feeling is the pain of the surgery you just went through. We don't need to reopen you up. And so I think a lot of times what people are doing is they think they're supposed to feel a certain way. And it's like, what can I do? How many things can I double down on? I'm going to meditate for 5 hours a day. I'm going to chant this. I'm going to do this plant medicine. And we've taken our Western culture of more and better, and we've applied it as something that requires mindfulness. Like, it's one thing when you would wander into the woods and come upon a plant that you were meant to ingest, and you had your experience, right? But with things so available, and not every shaman is going to, sometimes shaman will succumb to the desires of someone paying them versus being true to, right? And that's true in every field. So I think it's just, we're really at a part in history, or point in history, where the question is, can I be aware of what I actually need?
Better.
And might it be true that what I need is far less than what I think I need? Or can I learn to make the most of what I already have instead of just, like when we were kids? I don't play with my toys, but I need the new Transformers, and then I'm not going to play with that, right? And the same thing. So there is no doubt that plant medicine can help with PTSD and really deep levels of healing, and I've seen it happen, and there would be no reason for me to say otherwise. It's all about application.
Definitely better that
and it's
way.
all about, is this actually what you need? And I think we're at a point in the spiritual journey where we're all ready for a more mature dive, which is, there's some, a lot of people will say high level spirituality is like when I can make objects levitate, when I can meet ascended masters. High level spirituality is when you're attracted to what you need, not seduced by what you think you want. And when you get to that place, and again, that's why I will talk about my experiences, but I lead with them. Right, because it's not like, hey, watch Matt's video because of blah, blah, blah. Or, hey, he talks to Jesus all the time. I wanted to be no one special, and I wanted, if I meant to do this work, people will resonate with what is moving through me. And that's what happened. And I've met people who have had really big spiritual experiences. I've met people who have said to have big spiritual experiences, but what's important to me is the current state of embodiment.
And the thing is that I get asked a lot by people who find out what I do. Yeah. And they go, do you believe that these channels? Like it's just like, it seems pretty weird. Yeah. And it seems like God. I'm like, you know what? This is my take on the whole thing. And I go, this is my take on all of them. And the funny thing is, I knew Daryl Anka as a filmmaker for years before I even knew he channeled.
That's interesting.
Fascinating. Isn't the way the world works, right? And then years later I have this show. Yeah. So I've known people who are channels at a human level before I ever knew that they channeled. So, and knowing the way the world works, channeling's a tough gig, man. Yeah. Like, there's easier ways to hustle people than channeling. Right. And it's very difficult to do. Right. To fake. So I always go, look, believe it, don't believe it. Don't let the channeling part persuade you. Right. What are they saying?
What are they saying?
What is the message? Is it helping you? Is it helping you in your journey? Then take it. If it's not, discard it and move on.
Exactly.
And I say that about everything we talk about on the show. Like, of course. Does it resonate with you? Is it helping you?
Well, even if we take an example of like going to see a psychic reader, right?
Correct.
So if you go to a psychic reader, and let's say you go and they tell you information that you resonate with. Sure. Oh my God, that was true for my father, blah, blah, blah. You walk away having a good experience with a psychic reader because you yourself are in tune or intuitive enough to confirm that it was real and true information. Sure. If you go to a psychic reader and let's say that they say things that just doesn't feel right, it just feels off. How do you know it's off? Because you walk away more in tune with yourself. So whether it's a good or a bad reading, the whole purpose is that you walk away more in tune with yourself. Right. So if a channel says something that resonates and it feels good in your body, you're now walking away more connected and in tune with yourself, which means your healing is accelerating and your awakening is deepening, and that's the service.
You know what's funny is that I have a unique perspective on life because I speak to people like you all the time. I've spoken to channels. I've spoken to some of the best psychics in the world, mediums. I talk to them all the time, probably more than a normal human being does. Right. They don't generally have maybe one or two, but they don't talk to hundreds like I do. Right. So, I always get little, sometimes after the recording is off, they'll go, Alex, I have to tell you something. My guides are bugging me. I have to tell you. And so I'm like, all right, cool, you know, and they'll tell me something. And everybody who's been on my show, to be honest with you, I can feel when they're right or not. And they've been pretty much on point because I'm not asking about anything.
Right.
And they're saying stuff that have not been
En mä
mentioned on
sanon,
the
että mä
show.
teen sen
Things like that.
heti.
But then, like before, I used to go to psychics, like
Haluan
the
saada tän
carnival,
valmiiksi.
before any of this stuff, because I was always curious about it.
Tästä jotain
And they'll go, "You have a
Halloween-juttuja
brother?
varmaan.
No, I don't. You have a sister? Nope, no sisters.
Niin,
You
on
have
kyllä
someone with
sellaista.
the name S, T, you. You're like, and you're like, oh, dude, seriously, like this is such a hustle. Why are you doing this? You could feel it. You could feel the difference.
The cold reading, right?
The cold reading. Like,
Right.
but then I've had cold readings with a guest
Ensi
who
kerralla
are
sitten.
professional psychics,
Yeah.
and they'll just go,
Ammattijoukkoja.
yeah, this happened to you when you were this age. This happened to their
Right.
your wife is like this. Your son, your daughters are like this. Your mom did this and this and this. And is this happening to you right now? And I'm like, what is happening?
Right.
You
En
can
tiedä, voinko
feel
mua
it
sanoa
because,
edes
and I'm also very
harrastelijajoukoja,
conscious about what I say on the
haluan
show.
tehdä
course.
juttuja.
So if there's information out there,
Vaikka toisaalta
they'll
tietenkin
go, oh, this or that.
joka
No, they
alkuperähän
nail it.
ei
Yeah.
tarkoita
Lots of
ollenkaan sitä urheilumuotoa, mitä
will tell me your grandma's here, or this relative is here, and I'm like,
no se voi olla oikein.
okay, let's play
Joka
this.
muistaakseni
I wanna see
Intiassa,
what it shows.
Yeah.
And they'll
Intian
just start
tai
rattling
sanskritin
off
kielellä
Right.
tai
what they
jollain
look like, who
tarkoittaa
they are,
vain,
what their personalities are. I'm like,
ihan vain niin kuin
nobody knows this.
olemista ja elämistä,
Amazing.
liikkumista
So there's-
niin
for
kuin
someone
silleen
who's a very
kokonaisvaltaisesti.
Sure.
I'm a pretty grounded, practical guy.
Jos
And
nyt
I
ihan
call a
väärin
spade
muista.
a spade.
Right.
Just like so Galactic Federation, let's talk about that. That kind of stuff. I want to point these things out because I promise you, if I'm pointing it out,
Ei jotain
someone's thinking about it who's
jumppailua.
watching this.
100%.
So I want to put it out in there. I'm like, no, let's talk about this.
Se on hyvä
Because
se.
a lot of times I see people interview
Siihen pyritään
people like yourself or channels,
kokonaisvaltaiseen
and they don't
hengaan.
ask the obvious question. Like, do you think you were crazy when you heard a voice?
Totally.
Wouldn't that be the first question you would
Wouldn't
ask?
that be the first thing? Like,
When you saw
how did
Jesus,
how did
did-
you feel about that?
When you saw Jesus in the garden, did you think you were losing your mind? And then
Yeah.
I point these out because it's something that I want people to understand.
Sure.
Because that's the first thing that pops in their head.
Well, let's also be human beings.
Because that's what human
Because
beings
we
would
are,
ask.
and let's not
Matalattava.
pretend that spiritual is
Hengailla
some sort
kokonaisvaltaisesti.
of fantasized elite version of being human.
Ei se ole
Like,
kovinkaan
the whole
matalata, mutta
purpose
aika harva
is to
pystyy siihen.
realize the totality of your being and to personify it in your human
Yeah.
beingness. And so, that's really important. Like when I meet, when I'm out in public, I get recognized a lot, which is very humbling, and I love that. And a lot of times when people will meet me, they'll say, "Can I say something?"
No,
to you? I'm sure,
meillä on
whatever.
vähän
They go,
erilaiset tavoitteet kuin
I didn't expect you to
keskivertajampalla.
be so normal, because
I was floating a second ago.
well, if you got her a second ago, the water I made into a wine. It was
a nice Chardonnay.
it was a Pinot, whatever that is. I don't know what that is. And I'll tell you what happened with me. So I remember when I first started teaching, and I was really like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm channeling Ascended Masters. And I didn't have like a spiritual ego that like hurt people like what, but in myself, I started to notice, I think I have a
Mitkä on
spiritual
next
ego.
level
Like when I
tavoitteet?
first started doing
Of
this
course.
work. And the way I started to recognize this was
Taivasmaan päällä.
I was under the impression in the very early stages that if we weren't having a spiritual conversation, it
Eden.
wasn't deep. And then I realized, I'm really into spirituality. I found the thing in life I'm really talented at, and I need to stay in my wheelhouse to feel worthy in the presence of another person. And if I'm not dumpster diving into my emotional process in the presence of someone else, or if I'm not having a conversation about chakras and stuff,
Sure.
this must just be superficial, human.
Right.
And I actually had to check myself. And what I realized was how often that I would use my abilities to pitch myself because I didn't feel worthy just being who I was. And I went through this really incredible, after all these awakenings, I went through this integration phase where it felt like the universe was, how do I describe it? It felt like it was scrubbing the stench of spirituality out of me and helping me really tuck it in so that if I'm around someone who's energetically attuned, they can feel and they can sense. But if you don't have
Ensin
that
on liian
sense,
matalat ja sitten liian korkeat.
I'm just going to be the most polite,
Ei.
maybe
Ei
funny
pysty.
guy, and I'll say insightful things if it needs to be. But I challenged
kaikki
myself
välissä
because
sitten,
I would fly a
mitä
lot,
pitää käydä
going to
läpi.
events. And I would challenge myself, okay, if I'm meant to talk about what I do for a living, then God will dress up as a person who will ask me about it. And I challenged myself to be the human being that I kind of forgot
Pitäisikö
I
ottaa
was.
tavoitteeksi, että
And I had to bring
jos
it all
koettaisi
back and
kasvaa vielä
integrate it.
10 senttiä
And
pitemmäksi.
I think because my teachings have always been
On mulla keittiöjäkkärä, että kyllä mä
of
yletän
wisdom and
sillä
love.
ylähyllyllä.
It helped me integrate back the human beingness that I momentarily lost sight of. And it helped me always be aware of humility as one of the most powerful forces in existence. And it's through the humility and the love and that is woven into the wisdom I channel that helps make the most profound healing breakthroughs for people that I serve. And it allows me as a person, like I've been around intuitives who say, Matt, I just got to deliver this message. And I can respect that, but that's a stage I I am intuitive all the time for what the universe is telling me about my experience. I won't be intuitive about you unless we are consenting that's where we're working.
So the lottery tickets next week.
Yeah.
Can we discuss?
Yes. Alex, also, if you may, I'm getting the initials of a relative somewhere between A and Z. Do you know anyone who has initials?
From the age of 5 to 85, and it could be a man or woman.
Yes, and I'm getting that they live somewhere AD. AD.
They've lived at a point 80
That's right, which I think you might remember.
I might remember. Matt, brother, is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience? Any parting messages you'd like to give to the audience?
God, this has been so fun.
We could talk for another 4 hours, I'm sure.
I know. Well, we're at a point in history where a lot of the old paradigms fall apart. We're watching the deconstruction of ego structures, corporate egos, political egos, collective egos, religious egos, and in ourselves. And I think that the most important thing to remember is, yes, we're healing, yes, we're awakening, yes, the world is ascending. But we're not leaving our humanity behind. We're not trading up. We're not trading in an ego and trading up for a spiritual ego. We are learning to become living vessels of spirit, and we're learning to be an open window through which the light of spirit can enter this world. And it's the love we offer ourselves that becomes the love we're willing to offer another. And we're at a point of history where love is not about reward and punishment. Love equally is necessary to heal victims and predators. Everyone has to be transformed for these cycles to break. And how you treat yourself in private is the greatest likelihood of how you'll treat others in public. So as an example, if you are someone who's really hardcore into meditation, which is totally fine, that will usually create an opportunity to be a little bit distant, socially awkward, avoidant, or aloof, because how you meditate in private becomes how you engage the world publicly. If you love yourself privately, if you accept yourself and love yourself, I don't like how this feels, but this part's here to be loved. How you practice treating yourself privately will become how you engage the world publicly, and it will create the versions of people that you attract. And so if that's how the universe works, then if we want to really heal, really awaken, and really help this world ascend into the heaven and earth, it already is in a quantum reality. What we are all deciding right now is not whether this happens. It's what timeline we take and how direct are we going to get there. And what speeds up the fabric of time, the fourth dimension, is when I'm alone, can I and will I learn how to authentically love myself? And will I then celebrate the love that I find in myself? And will I pass that along as gifts to others as my contribution for the world I'm helping to ascend? when we get to that point, an
ja
interview
nollasta
like what we're
juomatta.
doing right now, if someone walks away from this interview feeling more connected to themselves, feeling more excited about loving themselves, and feeling a deeper connection to something that they've always known was there but they couldn't put their finger on, then we have succeeded. And that's why people who know that I channel, okay, but whatever. All I care about is that when I leave this planet, I'm leaving it far more loving and heart-centered than when I arrived here. And at this point in my career and my journey, the only thing that matters to me and my wife, of course, our marriage, our newborn puppy, all these beautiful things, but what matters to us is our connection and walk with spirit. And that's the work that we're offering to the world, is now is the time to reconnect with spirit. Now is the time to remember that not AI, but consciousness is the most reliable technology. And instead of relying on our devices, let's remember who we are as multidimensional beings. Again, AI has a purpose, but we're really at a point in time where this is where humanity remembers who it is. And it begins by each person watching this walking away with more of a felt sense of who they are. And that's the greatest intention I have for everything that I do, is that it's not about who someone thinks I am. It's my ability to help them have a clear understanding of who they are.
Couldn't have put it better myself, sir.
Oh.
Where can people find out more about you and the amazing work you're doing in the world?
Well, thank you, by the way. My website's mattcahn.org,
käykää pelaamassa vielä.
mattkhn.org. If you sign up for the free newsletter we send out, we also send you a link to our free documentary that was created. It's a documentary that you literally experience healing while you watch it. And I think actually the URL for that is mattcahn.org/love. And it's a free documentary that we created as a gift for the world. And, you can check out all the upcoming events that I'm doing, my wife and I are doing together. And really, this is just, it's time for the world to reconnect as one. And whether we're spiritual beings, not spiritual beings, however we identify ourselves to be, we're all included. We all have a vital role in this ascension. And we literally need the light and the power of every individual to help this world evolve. And so it's incredible when the spiritual community used to be these like little fringe groups. But the most intentional spiritual community is Earth, because we're all spirit. And so it's a beautiful thing to start even just watching the beginning stages of this intentional community remember itself.
And if I can end on this, sir, can we make #SniffChef a thing?
Sniff chef, yes. Yeah, I'm one of those sniffer chefs. That's how I feel when I say channel. I'm one of those channels. I'm one of those channels.
Sniff channel. I'm #sniff channel.
#sniff channel. It's a thing.
Let's make it a thing, everybody.
It's a thing now.
Brother, you're like a brother from another mother, man.
Likewise.
I appreciate you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming, man. Appreciate you.
How much love.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.
Mä innostuin tekemään näitä highlightteja, kun mä en kyllä tiedä, onko tämä nyt vielä vähän liian aikaista. Munaa. Silmämuna. En mä sitä nyt tänään tee. Pitäisikö ottaa semmonen sunnuntai-munaspesiaali? Oli vähän. Pienet myötähäpeät tästä näin. Piristää päivää. Podcasti loppu. Nyt ei ole muuta kuin pään sisäinen musiikki jäljellä. Et sitten kehdannut. No se on kyllä harvinaista. En halua tehdä tuonne hirveästi mitään, koska se muuten syö sitten tuolta naamalta. Juttui. Oh. Silmä, muna. Kyllä tämä tästä valmistuu ehkä joku päivä. Se jää soimaan mun päähän sitten. Tää on semmonen silmämunan räppi. Jeesus. Ehkä mun pitäis vaan mennä nukkuun. Nyt rupes väsyttää. Alkaa olla sellaiset jututkin. Heippa dei. Onnea peliin. Lycka till. Parempaa onnea peliin kuin pitkä veto. Katellaan huomenna. Tää ei näytä nyt hyvältä. Meni ehkä vähän liikaa. Kello 9. Okei. Huomenna kello 9 striimataan CS. Tää on selvä homma. Kyllä mä muistan. Kunhan sä muistat. Se on diili. I'll be there. Mitä näyttää, jos heitetään toi kokonaan pois. hassulta. Siis se on kyllä optio, että jättää sen kokonaan pois, mutta mä en haluaisi. Tai sitten haluaisin säilyttää vähän noita mun lyijykynäpiirrosjälkiä siinä mukana. Plus, että osa pitäisi piirtää kokonaan uusiksi. Tunti tuli täyteen. I think this is enough for today. Yes. Tolle. Ensi kertaa. Thank you. Kiitti chatti. Kiitti kaikki, ketä kävi mulkoilemassa. Joo. Kiitos Markus viestispämmistä. Ja mitä? Se on oikein hyvä. Thank you. See you next time. Goodbye. Good night.